This is your City Council Roundup, a recap of what's happening at City Hall with John Ongaro. The views expressed in this program are solely of those of the host and not necessarily those of the radio station or its partners.
Well, what looked like a marathon agenda last night didn't make for a very long meeting, just under 3 hours, a bit of a gift, but there's a lot to unpack from last night. Of course, the turf facility reared its ugly head again, and last night, well, it was something. We'll save the best to last, so let's get through it quick. On the agenda last night, Hillcourt Estates, the trailer park that the city owns, it comes in front of council every couple of years. They can't decide what to do with it. Well, the city now wants to get out of the business of being a landlord. But back and forth, it's gone, and now it came in front of council again. It looks like they're hanging on to it until March of 2028, meaning it'll come back up again like it usually does. Outdoor rinks were on the agenda last night. Decisions on which to keep and which to close, and the work that goes into that continues. A decision or a plan for what happens next with those rinks was deferred last night so the city can do more analysis of this year's usage. Also last night, the bizarre request for information on whether or not we can be buried with our beloved pets. Yeah, you heard that right. In case you missed it, it was presented at council a while back and given to administration to figure out because, hey, maybe, quote, we can make some money off of it. Yes, that was a suggestion last night. Well, breaking news. Administration did the work they were asked to do, and drum roll, please, you can't be buried with your pet at a city cemetery. You want to know why? In a nutshell, everyone would have to agree to the change in the contract for the space. And, well, the other people in the space don't really have a say anymore because, well, they're in a cemetery. Just a bizarre exercise. I'm not going to say that the issue is, well, never mind. The issue is now closed. All right. Next, the Ontario Winter Games. Not enough has been said on the work that had to happen to make these games a huge success. And at the same time, I don't think enough thanks has gone to Barry Stribe for his incredible leadership, not just in these games, but countless other city initiatives. He's an example of people doing good for the city, even when they're not paid for it or employed by the city. They do it because they love their community. And Barry Stribe is a shining example of this. Thank you for your work, Barry. Joining Barry in the presentation, another legend, in my opinion, in city administration, Paul Burke, who, by the way, also has countless highly successful initiatives under his belt and has his name all over all kinds of successful projects like these. These two are a dream team for the city, and they need to be acknowledged. What great news they brought. The games had a financial surplus of over $240,000. So they're going to give it out. $15,000 going to Pro Kids, $10,000 to Special Olympics Thunder Bay, $75,000 to the city's community youth and cultural funding programs and sport development projects in 25 and 26. And the remaining funds, estimated to be more than $123,000, will go to the city's event hosting reserve, intended to support bids and hosting of future major sporting events, kind of like the Scotties that are here this week. Next up on the agenda, the naming rights. The city is now exploring revenue opportunities to sell the names to various municipal assets. The initiative is part of a bigger strategy for long-term financial sustainability. They hired Performance Sponsorship Group to assess the market of potential naming rights and develop 3-year implementation plans. The hope is to generate a ton of money for these partnerships, which can then be invested back into the facilities. The plan was approved last night. 2025 is when it gets underway, and the focus will be securing primary naming rights for high-priority assets to begin with the Canada Games Complex, the Conservatory, the indoor multi-use facility, and then we'll expand to the Fort William Gardens, Delaney Arena, and Fort William Stadium, as well as other satellite arenas. With only a handful of media outfits to promote these new names, it'll be tricky to get the value of these things. But it's underway, so look for a new name of your favorite building soon. And finally, can I take a break?
You can. Back to that whole naming rights. I think that's a fabulous idea.
Sure is.
As I said the other day, other cities are doing it. You can even go to Kenora and see that they are naming some of their buildings, and they have 3-year sponsorships. Some are even $25,000 a year. I think it's a fabulous idea.
Yeah, and actually the company that did the Kenora sponsorship is the one that's helping us out on this.
Awesome.
But we've been down this road before, so let's keep our fingers crossed.
All right.
Finally, the gift that keeps on giving. And just so we're all on the same page, the views expressed here are not those of this radio station management or ownership. They are just mine and mine alone. You're welcome to have your own 2 cents at any time by leaving a comment or sending a text. It's all to make you understand what is happening. So away we go. Look who was back last night. Soccer Northwest started the evening with a presentation telling council that they've started a new not-for-profit organization to run their new fundraising campaign. And last night, the presentation was ready to go. The funds they raise will go towards the capital cost of the facility, if it's approved, with a goal of $1 million. They call this their contribution to the facility, yet the organization stands to make no money from city revenue at all. With that in mind, they had an ask. Of course they did. Shrouded in descriptions of how deeply they care about the community and using the standard giant heart pitch line, here comes their ask to council, and I quote, "All we ask is that our sports groups will have the priority in this facility." Just so we understand, they're going to fundraise with the hopes of raising $1 million towards the capital. In return, their sports groups will have a priority in the facility, a wholly owned city facility. Your ask is to have priority in it. Whoever is in charge of the communications for this group needs to be reevaluated. So city programs, school programs, events hosted and paid by the city don't get a priority. Their $1 million, if they raise it, gives them priority over all of the other initiatives. Well, that hardly seems fair, doesn't it? The organization first announced that they would be fundraising back in August of 2020. 4.5 years later, not a nickel has been raised. But last night, while gushing over their partnership with the city, they chose to announce that they want priority booking over all others. Well, let's make sure we have some facts here, because facts are a priority. Fact, City Council said no to a $35 million facility at Chapels Park after years of work and piles of money were put into it. It was turned down and literally thrown in the garbage. Fact, Soccer Northwest showed up 2 years ago with a hand-drawn building not nearly at the level of the Chapels building, essentially a tin can next to the auditorium, and sold it to council as the best idea ever. After the city-owned plan died at the tender process before, that time the organization presented to council a plan to build a building that was $17 million. That is a fact. That was the presentation. Public record. Then the games begin. Your council took the bait, jumped all over this organization's great idea and suggestion, and the rest is history. Now, that same organization wants priority booking in it. Fact, the new building is now in the tender process, and the maximum cost of the building will be just over $40 million. That's not all. We need to borrow money to build it, and the cost of borrowing that money is $9 million. That's a fact. And here we are, a $17 million pitch that has now gone to tender at $52 million. So let's put this into perspective. The same organization that presented a $17 million facility, who convinced your council to take the $17 million bait, has now put us behind the 8 ball with a $52 million tin can that your council will have presented to them in the coming weeks. The same organization that told us in August of 2020 that they were going to fundraise to help build the building. The same organization that 4.5 years ago hasn't even started yet. Their goal, $1 million. Some quick math will tell you that $1 million is about 2% of the cost of this new building. 2%. A little more quick math. The difference between $17 million and $52 million is $35 million. That's the difference between what they proposed and what we're getting. Does that number sound familiar? It should. Ironically, that's the same number that was the total cost of the chapel's build that the council said was too high 2 years ago and scrapped it. So now we're inflating the building cost from $17 million, their idea, to $52 million, and it's okay to you? It makes no sense. And the organization that put the city in this position is now telling that they want priority in the building. Let that sink in. This story gets more ridiculous every time this group shows up. It was said many times last night that only one issue councillors and the mayor are hearing in the community is the price of the facility, not the need. I completely agree. There absolutely is a need. We should have one. But the cost has now become so ridiculous, and we're so far down the road that your council has no choice but to accept it. After all, the new fundraising decision has matching shirts to go along with it in a slick-looking group, complimented by the counselors over and over last night. And Lord knows we're going to be handed the stock footage on the TV news tonight of the chanting children outside of City Hall begging for a new building. How could we say no to them? One last fact. you do have a say in this. You actually do have a voice. If you're okay with your tax dollars going towards a facility that we were going to be told was $17 million, then you're probably okay with the fact that the organization that got us here is going to try to kick back 2% of the cost. And we'll get to decide who gets to come and go in the building because they want priority. If you're not okay with this $52 million price tag, then say something. Do something. Call your counselor at large, call the mayor, and ask them what happened to $17 million. Ask them why we were not okay with $35 million at Chapels a couple of years ago, but all of a sudden we're okay with $52 million. It doesn't make any sense. Somebody has to say something or do something. It's not too late. The tender approval is coming in front of council soon. The best gift Soccer Northwest could ever get to wipe the mud off their face in this is a deal in the tender process around $20 million. It's not going to happen. But this sales pitch last night from the organization that wants priority in a building that more than doubled in price is weeks away from working unless someone says something or a couple of counselors have the courage to do something. Don't hold your breath. The meeting was done last night at 9:10.
Wow. All right. This tender process, is that due actually this month, if I'm not mistaken?
Yeah, it's coming.
At the end of this month.
So it'll be presented. Now, we've seen this movie before. It was presented for Chapels, and it lost.
Yeah.
So it's not too late. But I'm just so exhausted with this file that I can't get the $17 million out of my head.
Yeah.
And I'm going to get all kinds of hate mail. It happens every time we bring this up. Nobody is saying we don't need the building. Nobody is saying we don't want the building. But you pitched us a $17 million building that you incredibly confidently delivered to the entire community that I've talked to people. I know guys, and they said $17 million, and we're at 52. And then there's going to be a fight about, no, John, it's not 52. Yes, it is, because you have to borrow $9 million that has interest. It's going to be $52 million.
Does that price does not include, is it site preparation or parking or all that?
It doesn't include the road changes. It doesn't include the movement of that beautiful baseball diamond.
Yeah.
None of that is included. This is a white elephant. And I'm telling you, I don't know how these counselors are ignoring the fact that it's not the $17 million that they changed their mind for. Chapels was 35. And look it up. It was a much nicer building. It was a way more functional building.
Yeah.
It was not a tin can. And now we've got something that's far less for twice the price. Something doesn't smell right.
So you have mentioned here on the Roundup and in many times that, to folks have their say.
Absolutely.
Do you truly believe someone having their say will change this decision?
There's not enough people paying attention to this. And I've said this a million times. One of the reasons this little opinion piece, because that's what it is, exists is to at least get people asking questions and talking about it. Talk to your counselors. If it matters to you, imagine what we could do with $52 million. Mm-hmm. Imagine the people that we can help. Imagine the buildings that we can build. You're the one that said to me this morning, these stories of bubbles keep coming up.
Yeah.
They're not functional. They are expensive to operate. I get all of that. But they're $7 million. We could build 4 of them.
One more thing. The other part of this that keeps coming up is you go back to 5 years ago, Soccer Northwest. Here we are 5 years later. The finality to this, whether it's a decision to either stop or let's go, the tender's been accepted. It's been 5 years.
Well, and
here we are again still.
In the presentation last night, the chairperson kept talking about, well, we've been at this for 10 years. Yeah, you've been at this for 10 years because it hasn't been a good idea. And the only good idea that came was turned down by council, and that was $35 million. But all of a sudden, we're okay with 52? It is just bizarre. I'm telling you this, though. Once this is passed, which I'm going to anticipate they're going to, because I don't think there's any counselors, regardless of how many times you call, that are even going to listen to you at this point. And that's just me being honest. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to talk about it anymore. God bless them. I hope it works out. Great on you, but giving them the priority in the building over all else, Doesn't make any sense to me. The whole project is just exhausting at this
Long
point.
process and a lot of money. There we have it. John, thanks for your input. This has been the City Council Roundup. Again, a couple ways you'll be able to find this and for recap on our website, 999thebay.ca, and in just a bit via our T-Bay Tall Talk and text line, 807-344-8229. Just text the word council. We'll give you a direct link. Thank you, John.